Hello, ladies and gents. My name is Alex Camargo. I'm here with my good friend, Daniel Silva, and we're with the Lighthouse Podcast. First, before we get started on this new episode, do us a favor, click that like button, subscribe to this channel, and then share this episode if you found any value from it. All right, let's get this going. Here we are. Today we bring you a guest of an industry who's never been to our podcast before. Danny, how you doing? Good?
I'm doing good. Thank you. Yes.
Let's introduce our guest. Our guest is Jen O'Neill, an appraiser. We've never had an appraiser here before.
Oh, yeah. This is a special spot for you, Jen.
Thanks,
first.
you guys.
Yeah, yes.
It's always good to be the first.
Set the bar high for the next appraiser who comes here.
What do they say? If you're second, you're the first loser or something like that?
So she's first. All right, Jen, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Jennifer O'Neill, and I have a company called Appraisal Alliance. It's in Danbury, Connecticut, and we do residential appraisals. So just so I know all your audience, all the realtors know, like there's a separation between residential and commercial. So that means I'll do single-family houses, condos, multifamily houses, 1 to 3 family, 1 to 4 family, and land appraisals.
Won't touch commercial.
I'm not licensed for commercial. I actually do dabble a little bit, and so I'll work with like another commercial appraiser if I need to do something. Like if you've ever gotten, I did do a house over on Beaver Brook, maybe before the pandemic, and it's in a commercial zone. Mm-hmm. It's helpful to have a resource of a commercial appraiser to because you always have to do highest and best use for any appraisal. And it seems like a routine thing that people don't think about, but it's like integral to what you're doing. So if it makes more sense to tear that house down and put up a commercial building, you need a commercial appraiser to, I don't know why I can't say that word. Yeah. Because I'm residential.
Because you're residential.
That's something that I did not know.
I didn't know that
because we as realtors, even though some brokerages out there would prefer that if you have a commercial client, you bring that to a commercial agent. But I could easily represent that buyer. So if somebody brings to you I guess you don't even get the call if it's a.
I do, and then I'll refer it out. So it's helpful for like me to refer to someone else, but it's But sometimes I had someone who like just couldn't understand. I'm like, I can't do that appraisal. Like lots of times you get a private job and they're like, we don't really need this. And I was like, no. Like I cannot do that.
Yeah.
This is just for court. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, exactly.
So how did you get started into this field?
So way back in ancient times when I was in high school in the 80s, my uncle had a big appraisal. I think he had a real estate and an appraisal, and they might have done insurance too at some point, firm. And probably when I was in high school, my dad was switching jobs, and my uncle, Tom Collins, so any of your longtime viewers may have heard of him. And so he was like, Frank, come over and try this. I think you'll love it. And my dad did try it after some prodding. I've heard in later stories. And my dad is like the biggest appraiser geek ever. My dad is so cute. One of my favorite things about my dad is that when I meet other people who know them, one of the first things they always say to me is like, I love your dad. And I can always be like, I do too. So in high school, I was working after school at the appraisal company, and I put together what we called the exhibits, so back then appraisal was probably like 8 pages, maybe 10 pages on and we brought the pictures to 1 hour photo, and I double stick taped them into the reports, and I put all the arrows on the maps and put in the site plans and the deeds and put the whole report together. And one of my big jobs was delivering to the clients. So that was like a big thing at the time. I'd be like, the day it's done, it's going to get hand delivered to your local bank, and it was cool for me because I was like the face of the company at that point because I was interacting with all the people at the banks and seeing them all the time. So so that was really fun. And then I went away to college and I was home for a while trying to decide what I would do. And I was just, got my license. I had taken principles and practice and stuff in high school. So I was like, I'll just do this till I figure out what I'm really going to do.
Right.
Here we are.
And here we are, yes. So,
but that was something that you were familiar with because you were brought up around it, right? So that made it easier for your decision.
It happens a lot. It was also very convenient because I had a stepson at the time and I could work my schedule around that. And so it had a lot of benefits. Like everyone knows, like being self-employed is...
gift and a curse.
Yes, exactly. So...
Yeah, it could get very uncomfortable at times. We understand that really well, right?
Yeah, that's something we can all relate to.
Yeah. So appraisals is something that we have to explain what it is to most of our clients, right?
Yeah.
Because, coming into the process, I believe that, like the finance part of it, they know that they have to get pre-approved. They know that they have to get that money from somewhere to buy something. But so nothing better than having a professional here, a specialist, to kind of go through with us a little bit. How does the appraisal, how does it work from like, in a summarized version from beginning to end?
Well, like I want to point out that like the appraisal is usually like the last thing to get ordered in the whole process, but it's the thing that everything pivots on.
Right.
So it makes it a little hard for the appraiser. Like you're in kind of this no-win situation because it's like chronic. Everything else is done, but we need the appraisal. Sometimes I really wish there was a way where you could move the appraisal up in the process because it would save you guys some headaches too.
Right.
To know what you're dealing with. But I'm going to forget what you said. Just like
So
basically
the
you
process,
have to. One thing I want to point out about an appraisal is that I work for the lender, the bank, the client. Like the homeowner is not my client. So back in the day, all the mortgage companies, if I had to do an appraisal, I would go to your house and I would pick up a check at the door. That was like a common thing to do. So then the homeowners would feel really possessive, like that's my house, that's my appraisal, I paid for it, how come you can't talk to me about it? But really, the homeowner needs to remember that they always pay for the appraisal, but they don't own it.
Right.
And my responsibility is to the bank. They want to know that the money that they're lending is going to be safe. That they're making a good decision with their finances. So that's the primary responsibility is to the bank, and then the banks are governed by all their regulations that I have to be aware of them and help out with my end of it. But basically, when the appraiser gets called, I get a call, and the first thing I do is I'll pull up all the information on the house. So now it's really nice because everything's online. So I get the property card online, I get the deed online, I get the site plan, so I can have a better idea of what sometimes you would get orders and you just go to the house, you have no idea what you're going to find when you get there. That still happens.
I was going to say, try some multifamilies in Danbury.
This happens to me a lot now with like these construction loans that I'm doing for one of my clients. Like I got there and it was just the shell of a old house was still there. And I'm like, okay, this is not what you ordered, but okay, I can do this. But then, so then ideally, in an ideal world, I have enough time to do some research and research the comps ahead of time so that when I go to the house, because a lot of what the client wants is just turnaround time. Right. Everyone wants a quality product, but people are like, you needed it yesterday.
Microwave society.
Yeah. And appraisals aren't set up that way. Like it's not a fast process. It's not like a thing where you can just if I got a condo the other day and I got it out the same day. That hasn't happened in so long because it just hasn't been, it's been so busy and there's been so many other variables. But it's like 2 weeks is a good turnaround time to manage all my other clients and do everything. Mm-hmm. But some of the clients, like one of my mortgage companies, they want that appraisal back right away because their pull to their client is how fast they're turning things around. So you have to be cognizant of like everybody's needs. Like it's kind of hard sometimes, like sometimes appraisers just get stuck in their own little world. And even I say, like, I live under a rock. I don't know who anyone is. But I see a lot of appraisers just get, like, so number-oriented or so antisocial. And like that, like, I hear about, like, when I meet realtors, when I meet homeowners, like, I'm in your house. So the next thing I do is I make an appointment. I go to the house. And I'm usually there for about an hour because I think it's important to connect with the homeowner, especially like on a refinance. Like, even if the bank doesn't realize that, I'm representing them at the house. So I want them to feel comfortable with me in the house. I'll look to see if I need to take off my shoes or look around to see if there's any other cues to help me fit in a little bit better and just kind of go with the flow of whoever's in the house. But some appraisers just, they have an appointment, they're in and out of the house, they don't talk to anyone. Right. I have a whole list of questions I do at the end, like, because I want to write about their house. I want to write about the things that are important to them. Because after I see your house and do the inspection, which to me is almost the smallest part, I'm going to make sure the house is still there. I'm going to make sure you don't have holes in the walls. I'm going to, you know, like, whatever. And the research takes forever. And the typing of these 20, 30, and longer page reports takes forever these days. Right.
There's no app for that where you just click and then
there are, like, even if you think about, like, now, like, before I used to put arrows on maps and now I just hit a button and it puts everything in there and it puts the distances in there. Like the flood maps, they can go right in now. Like, there's so many time-saving things, but it's still just not if everything falls into place like that condo I did, you know, and this is what I say, like, when you have realtors involved, it's so much easier because you have people who are seasoned.
Y'all heard that? Y'all heard that?
It's a plug.
True. It's totally true. I say it all the time. Because you have people who are involved in the transaction, who know what they're doing, who are guiding the whole thing along. And then when I go to look at comps, they're usually going to be in the range that everybody's talking about. Everyone's on the same page. It's like when you get the homeowner.
Two realtors already agreed on what would make a good price for that home.
Right.
Yeah. Do you like when realtors bring you comps?
I talk about this with all my realtors, even like in the past couple of weeks, I've talked about, I love it. I absolutely love it. There's only one time I don't like it, and I'll explain why. And it's not even a real reason. But I see everyone as a team. We're all trying to work together. And I know at different times, like, the realtors and the appraisers have felt like they're opposing.
Right.
And I know that there's
Sometimes, all the time.
No.
In a rising market.
Have you worked with me? You haven't worked with me.
I know.
But it's like a team. Like, if I'm doing an appraisal for a sale and I'm having trouble coming into the value, the first person I call is my realtor. Whoever's working on that project, because I'm going to say, listen, like, I pulled all these comps, and this is where I did a house of a realtor in Danbury. He's retired. He'll never see this. I hope. So there was like this pressure because I'm appraising his house. Yeah. And it was before COVID, before this crazy market, but he just had this value he wanted for his house, and he's a realtor. I kid you not, I put like 12 comps in that report. And I'm not going to leave them all in there. And I just could not come to the value. So then I had to call him and be like, this is what I used. You know, he gave me like 4 more comps. I put those in, they don't work. I called him again. And still, so the good thing about that was, like, that one didn't come into value. Sorry, everybody. But I think the realtor on the other side was happy. So there's always winners and losers. But at the same time, that homeowner, realtor, knew that I had looked at everything. Yeah. Like, if there was a way to make it work, I had unturned every stone. Yeah. You know, so I don't feel like there were such hard feelings as there might be. I feel like that comes out a lot. I hear from the realtors where the appraiser was in and out. They didn't talk to me. They refused to take my comps. Why?
At least take it. I mean, somebody already went through the trouble of...
Yeah, someone is giving you information. Yeah. I'll tell you when that helps me the most. I'll get to a house, I've done all my research, and all of a sudden I get there, and for some reason I didn't realize there was no garage. Now, the bank is going to want me to bracket no garage. And I don't have a comp that I looked at with no garage. So if I'm in Danbury or New Fairfield or Brookfield or Ridgefield or wherever around here, I can go look up another comp and hopefully find it and take it. Maybe not right while I'm in that town, though.
Yeah.
If I'm down in Greenwich or I'm up in Litchfield County where I don't have really good service, but the realtor has brought me a comp, and lo and behold, there's one with no garage, and I think that happened to me once. Yeah. Go by, take the picture, go back, type up the report. I was faster because of that help I got.
Yeah. And I think also because of what happens to a lot of these realtors are that their approach, they might come to the home that you're appraising, whatever the case may be, maybe with some comps, and now their approach is like demanding that it should come into that value. It's all about your attitude, how you talk to the person. Look, don't want to step in anyone's shoes. This is what I worked to get to the value where I'm at. Maybe if you see something that you don't like, we can talk about it. I pulled out some comps here for you. Just if you want them, here they are. If not, that's okay as well. And how you talk to someone can alter the way that they're going to talk to you back.
That's true.
And a lot of times these guys are like, look, this is what we need. It's got to come in at that value. And
all my realtors are so nice. They don't do that.
And now, like, the guards will go up.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, like, I'm doing this. This is my job. So
when the whole Dodd-Frank thing came out, that was the whole not influencing appraisers. And I could see a big change. Like, I literally went to one of my classes once, and the instructor was saying how the realtor came and sat on the front stoop and wouldn't go in the house with the appraiser because they didn't want to be accused of influencing the appraiser. So it was like the pendulum swung too far in the other direction. Yeah. And I think the real reason, so I'm totally naive, just if you didn't know. So when I do work, I just do a good job and I talk to everybody and I try to be nice. And I never think about like the unethical people that might be out there. Yeah. And I've had clients in the past actually who, before Dodd-Frank, would pressure you. They're not supposed to ask you like, will this work out? But I had one client call me and be like, will this work out? And so of course, I never looked it up for them, but say I did. And they had one that it was like not even close. It was not going to work. And I was like, no. And basically I knew they had like Joe Schmo appraiser, who they call it. And I'm like, don't call me for that. Call when it needs to go through underwriting, when you want everything to fall into place and to work. So I didn't get that job. Like at that time, they were hiring you directly. I didn't get that job, but then they hired someone else to do it. The whole deal went through, and it was over on Great Plain Road near my house. And lo and behold, 2 years later, I see the big foreclosure sign in front of that house, and I go, I knew it. Yeah. I knew that wasn't right, and they just found someone to make their numbers work, and it didn't, like someone got hurt by that.
Yeah,
right.
And it's hard for people to see the value in that. Like when you have a homeowner and they put the, down, they're ready to put the down payment down, they found the house of their dreams, and then the appraisal doesn't come in. No one's like, oh, maybe this isn't a great financial decision, or maybe we should think twice about this. They're like, oh, the appraiser's screwing up the job. Yeah. No one is ever like thinking like, oh, and they're looking out for me. And I have heard that. I had one appraiser I know say that the parents had been at the inspection and the appraisal hadn't come in. And afterwards they came up to him like months later and were like, you know what? It really worked out that we didn't get that house and we got something better, and it was, it would have been a bad investment. It would have needed a lot of repairs, but nobody thinks about that part. Because it's emotional.
And I like that you mentioned that, because we're constantly talking to our clients, and sometimes we, at least once, will try to discourage a client from making this big financial decision now if we don't think that they're ready for it. Right. It's getting into a house, even though you're putting the least amount of money possible down, right? So let's say you're buying a house, it's an FHA loan, you're putting 3.5% down, you still have your 3-4% closing costs, and then you have no more money left. Mm-hmm. That's tricky, because that boiler, that furnace can go the very next day in the middle of the winter. How are you going to deal with that?
Right.
Can you shell out $10,000-$15,000 to fix it? And if you can't, how are you going to handle a harsh winter? So we're constantly talking to our clients. We don't get much into their finances because it doesn't really pertain to our side of the job. But we want to make sure that we give them all this information as much as possible. Hey, just, it's one of it's one of the great investments you're going to make in life, but be ready for it. You have to also be a responsible homeowner, of not only taking care of the inside of the house, but also take care of the outside of the house, right? Make sure that you're cutting your grass and all that. Like your house doesn't look like the worst house on the street type of thing.
Yeah.
But it's with this level of investment for a lot of people, right? Also comes with the same higher level of responsibilities,
Right.
and like to our clients buying multifamily homes, and you can buy a multifamily home with an FHA loan of also 3.5% down. Right, but I tell my clients all the time: make sure you have $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 readily available. Should not only your furnace go bad, but what if your tenant's furnace goes bad?
Yeah.
Like as a landlord, you have to provide heating for them, right?
No, it's really important, and somehow people don't always think about those things.
Yeah. So it's nice to and you've done a few appraisals for us. It's nice to work with people who are mindful of that, right? It's so easy for you. You get an appraisal order, you go there, and it like everything basically comes down to your funnel, and it's so easy for you to say, you know what, screw it, I'm going to appraise this at $50,000 over what I really think it should be, but at what gain, right? There's nothing for you to gain from that, right?
Well, one thing I always tell, realtors have told me, their clients will be like, why did the appraisal come in right at the sale price, right at the number? And I'm always like, I have an answer for that. I'm like, if you talk to 3 appraisers that I know, everyone has their it's an opinion of value.
Yeah.
So they learn different ways to do the appraisal. So maybe they adjust differently for a garage or a bathroom or acreage, or their research at this time showed a different number or whatever, but they're going to be in a certain range. And then I don't know about the other appraisers. I take no responsibility for that. But then, so in the case of a sale, obviously I get the contract. So if the sale price is, let's just pick a round number, $300,000, and I have comps, and 2 of them are a little below, and 1 of them is just over. So if I'm at I'm not gonna blow the deal. Some appraisers learn differently than I do, or have different attitudes, which is I'm the appraiser, I know what it's worth, it's this and not a penny more. I'm it's an opinion of value. You want to be within a range. You have to be, but it's not I'm going to call it $295 and just screw the deal or $298. It's not going to make or break it, because I think on the other end, you guys work things out, and the bankers work things out. If I come in at $295 and the sale price is $300, there was no room for me to move. That is the numbers, on a condo, they'll get so tight. There's nothing to adjust for. This is what they sold for, and this is it.
Yeah, the air in there felt a little cleaner.
Yeah. It's crazy, but it's just, I don't know. In the end, it's it's an opinion of value, and it's based on a lot of facts and a lot of adjustments that we have to support, and a lot of classes, and it's ridiculous. People, I haven't had anyone ask me. I used to have people ask me all the time, oh, what does it take to be an appraiser? And I'm always it's ridiculous. And it's gotten more ridiculous since when I first started. It's prohibitive. And even now, you were talking about something before, Daniel, but that you could do commercial and residential.
Right.
So in our licensing system, we would have what was normally called a trainee. So then all of a sudden the banks came down and they're we can't have trainees do the inspection. So I want to point out the irony of the history of that, because now all the banks and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and everybody are oh, let's just hire someone that never did any of this before. Maybe it's an inspector, maybe it's a realtor, but there's no rules on this. And have them do the inspection so the appraiser can type more and stick at the desk and get more work out. And I'm thinking,
well,
wait a minute, I have someone I trained who knows how to measure, who knows what I'm looking for, who knows the important things, and you won't let them go to the house.
Yeah. It's funny that you're saying that, because this just happened last week, and it was the first time that I'd ever seen it. We had a double closing. Sellers were selling their house and buying the next one, and the buyers of the houses are seller clients were buying or were selling, we're putting 20 or 25% down, and then we got a notice from the other agent saying, hey, they waived the appraisal. I'm like, great, one less thing to do. And then a week before closing, the agent calls me desperately, hey, Alex, the bank called me, and I actually have to go to the house. I have to take a whole bunch of pictures the way they told me to take the pictures. I have to measure the rooms, and I have to upload it to their system. There was probably some technicality or some trouble with uploading the pictures. She stayed 4 hours in the house trying to upload everything. We gave her the access to the Wi-Fi just so she can have a better internet connection. And she was there for 4 hours. I'm like, you spent 4 hours of your time. The bank should have sent an appraiser here. I mean, they were putting 25% down. We thought the price was fair. We would have no problem with a full appraisal anyway, but you're doing somebody else's job right now. And fortunately it worked out, but it was the first time I saw it. I'm like, I hope this doesn't become a thing.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of talk about the hybrid appraisals and the AVMs and all the things that they're doing now with these, where they're trying to facilitate whatever they're trying to facilitate.
Yeah,
but
more work for you and I.
Everybody
more work for us, yeah.
Yeah.
Like we already don't have enough in our hands, right? Do you do appraisals for, let's just say Alex and I we know each other and he wants to sell me his house, and like, okay, it's worth that. And I'm like, okay, you're just telling me that it's worth that, but I want a professional opinion.
I just had
a homeowner. Do you get hired for that?
Yeah, I just had a homeowner call me, and exactly that. He wanted to buy his neighbor's house. They were friends, and he just wanted everything above. He didn't want there to be bad feelings at any point. So they wanted to get an appraisal done. And then I think in the end, the homeowner backed out, the neighbor backed out and didn't sell the house. But it was really refreshing and nice to talk to him, because when a homeowner calls me directly for an appraisal, which might be for estate purposes, probate, it might be for divorce, it might be for, I don't know, like that. You're buying your neighbor's house and you want to keep everything good. I feel like I'm not the only appraiser, but I feel like I'm immediately like, okay, these are the things you need to look out for. This is what can happen. This is the ins and outs of it. But
Right. That's a good way to take away that burden from your shows. Like, oh, this is what my house is. Because, sometimes as a homeowner, there's a lot, it's such an emotional decision to sell, because that's where you built memories. If you had kids, that's where they grew up, and now you're going to sell it. That's by bringing a specialist, a professional such as yourself. It kind of like, oh, look, it's their opinion, and we go by what they say.
It's funny when people question you, or oftentimes you may get this, ask you to use one comp that you see that you can use, and then almost insist that you use it. I always think, do people really think that us real estate professionals, you an appraiser or an attorney, will risk their livelihoods, will risk their license for making one mistake that could cost you your license? And a real estate license is relatively easier to get, but you have to have a whole college degree. It doesn't have to be in appraisal, but you have to have a whole college degree and then go through the appraisal licensing process and then be an apprentice for so many thousands of hours.
Yeah. Oh, it's ridiculous. It'll take Amber, who's working with me now. She's working part-time at it, but minimum 2 years of working with someone, and it'll take longer because she's doing it part-time.
Yeah. To be a fully licensed appraiser?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Where I can send her out and the banks aren't going to say she can't go by herself because she's only the trainee.
Yeah.
But she'll have been doing it for over 2 years, and they still wouldn't let her go.
And
it doesn't make sense.
Most people really don't want to risk that, right? You work so hard towards something.
I don't know. I don't make enough money to risk my license over something like that. It's just not worth, like that. Your livelihood, your job, what are you going to do after that? And your reputation is shot.
Yeah, I was talking to an agent not too long ago. It was about a FHA appraisal, actually, and the appraisal pointed out a couple of things. The appraiser pointed out a couple of things, and that agent was like, oh, they just want that because now you guys really have to go back, right? A picture will no longer do justice, type of thing.
They have always wanted the appraiser to go back and take the picture themselves.
So he's like, oh, he's just trying to get the extra fee to go back.
The
I'm like,
$125 ain't worth it.
yeah. I said, are you kidding me? Do you think that, especially now they're dealing with the government, right? They're dealing, for $125, like these people are not playing.
It's a lot of responsibility.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you don't want to do, even with, I do FHA appraisals, and I've taken many FHA classes, and it's still like a little mystery what they're looking for. And that, like, then they get stricter, then they get less strict. So what are they, and I'm always worried, like, that I'm at the house, that, like, are the realtors there going like, I hope she doesn't notice this. I'm just not going to point it out. And you might not notice something, that's going to happen to every appraiser and every realtor for a different reason, for a different thing. It's not like an omission on purpose. But so, you do want to err on the side of caution if there's something. And the thing is, like, I can bring issues up in the appraisal that I like, oh, this is probably a red flag, let me bring it up. Just because I bring it up, underwriting can say, oh no, that's okay, that's and fine. Sign off on it. So it's actually someone else's. All I'm doing is inspecting and reporting. I'm reporting what I saw.
Yeah.
And someone else is actually on the bank's end making the decision of, is this a risk? Do we need to reinspect? Do we need to call for a repair? So it's not even the appraiser, but the appraiser is the one who reports it and gets all the responsibility.
We need to bring an underwriter on this show.
Yeah. Hear their side of the story.
Let me ask you this one last question. When COVID hit, for a month, we didn't know what was going to happen, right? We're all in limbo, like what's going to happen.
Chaos. Nobody knows.
And then after that, you started seeing all the houses getting a contract, and then every appraiser, I think appraisals at that time were taking 2 or 3 weeks because you guys were so busy and there's only so many of you. You went through probably a 1.5 year period of stress because you had to catch up to a fast rising market, right? And sometimes the numbers just weren't there. Now that this market is shifting and maybe coming down a little bit, how much adjusting do you actually have to do? How much are you considering this? Because right now it's an uncertain. At least at that time, we knew that the market was rising. Now we don't know if this market is going to drop 5%, continue where it is, or if interest rates lower a little bit, it may continue to rise just because we don't have enough housing for the population anyway. How much harder does that make your job?
It's harder because I feel like a lot of people, like after the fact, they're like, oh, you should have known this. But when you're in the middle of it, you don't know. Like a lot of people can relate that when COVID happened, like people wouldn't even let me go to their house, and the bank was like, oh, if they'll let you in, just go. And I'm like, everyone else is staying home and I have to put on a mask and gloves and booties and go to people's houses. And I don't know if I don't want to bring sickness to their house. I don't want to bring it back to my house. But it's, I don't know, it's such a crazy thing. So like, and I have to say, like, the one benefit of doing it for a long time and working in an appraisal firm since 1987 or whatever is that I saw like the market crash of 91. I saw 2008. Like, yes, you see these market changes and they don't happen all the time and they happen more gradually than you think. So, and then when they happen, it's like a big crazy thing. But there's tools in place. The thing is that if you have a new appraiser, they've never seen that. They don't know how to use it. So when the market starts going up, you can make time adjustments. And when the market's going down, you can make negative time adjustments. And knock on wood, like I didn't have a big problem. I was ready. Like I'd been through it before. I'm like, the appraisals are going to be a nightmare. I don't know. If you worked with me, I had a pretty good record. I don't feel like, I felt like I really smooth through COVID on an appraisal, on that aspect of appraisal. So like right now, you can notice like maybe inventory catching up. Like you're not really, actually this is a really good, I'm doing an appraisal right now for court purposes. And I had to do retrospective to August of 2020 and then current. And when they looked at the August appraisal, they're like, oh, shouldn't there be time adjustments? And I'm thinking, like, you think in your head, like, oh, yeah, like that was August, it happened in March. But there was that solid month of nobody knew what was going on. Yeah. And then it was just, you could see the inventory going down and down and down, but you weren't necessarily, and you guys started getting multiple offers, but you weren't necessarily seeing that reflected in that. So I went back to all my reports during that time period, that whole, July, August, September, and they still said stable market. Right or wrong, if some other appraiser's listening to this and wants to critique that, that's fine. But like, so it wasn't apparent yet.
Yeah.
And from my point of view, like as long as the numbers are working, like I'm reflecting what the market's doing still. Like that's my job, is to reflect. I'm not predicting if the rates are going to go up or down. I'm reflecting what. And that's why it's really like when you guys come to me and say, listen, we, when the market got crazy, we had 15 offers. We had, 12 above value and 6. Those were insane. Like some of the appraisers might not listen to that, but that's the most important information. You guys are in the trenches of the change.
Yeah.
Right.
And the appraisers are supposed to listen and reflect that.
Yeah. I'm glad that you think that way, because we ran into some appraisers who don't.
Yeah.
They strictly work with the historical data and no feel for what's coming up.
Right.
Yeah. And then we also, every now and then, you're dealing with an appraiser who's from out of town,
Yeah.
like across the state, appraising properties here. We had a couple of issues in New Milford with that. And of course, in the most formal way, in the most polite way, here are some comps and that we think you may be able to use. And we pointed out why we think the appraiser should use. And in one of the instances, we have a good friend on the other side of the transaction, an agent. And as soon as we told him who the appraiser was, he looked back and said, it's not going to work. Like, because they had 2 experiences with the same appraiser. She wasn't from here. She's from out of town. Again, not just, 10, 20 miles away, across the state.
Right.
And we thought, okay, no problem. We'll prepare better. And then we sent a long email saying, hey, a nice email saying, hey, we think maybe we could have used these 2 comps. Is there an opportunity that you can use either one of them, type of thing? And it didn't get there, but I think it got us closer where we were able to work out with the seller.
That's good. I mean, I don't know who these appraisers are who don't listen. Like on the one hand, like you don't want people influencing you, but like from my point of view, I know what I'm doing. You can give me anything you want, because
if
it doesn't
checks out,
mean
it
I
checks
have.
out.
If it works, I'm going to use it. And I had a realtor one time give me. I had already worked everything out before I got there. I think it was in Southbury or something, and everything looked good. And then she gave me comps, so I look at them to see if there's something I missed or something I didn't think of, because there are like.
It's just more information.
It's more information. It's helpful. It doesn't hurt anything. And I started gritting out her comps, and I'm like, these don't even support the value. Like, what is she doing?
I've already
trying to kill this deal.
I'm like, it works both ways. And I was like, no, and so I didn't use any of them. The one thing I was going to say before, Daniel, when you were talking, is that I had one realtor give me 15 comps. I don't know, it was some ridiculous amount of comps. And I don't know if everyone does this, but if you give me comps and I don't use them, I will disclose in my report, these are the addresses and this is why I did or didn't use them. They weren't, and sometimes there's not it's not any better or any worse than the comps. I just feel like mine is better. It was closer. It was whatever. But for that one report, I was like, oh my God, half the report is me talking about why I didn't use any of her comps or whatever. So I was like, I want comps, but I don't want 15.
Narrow them down to
Unless
3.
I call you and ask for more.
And you've called me a couple of times on deals that weren't mine, asking about previous properties that I sold. I love that. I love that you actually go the extra mile to investigate, because it could have been something within that deal that doesn't get published to the MLS, but that would have mattered to yours.
Right.
And not a lot of appraisers do that.
No.
Not a lot of appraisers
I don't understand.
do that.
I can remember 2 specific times that I called realtors. One was just a ranch or a raised ranch in Danbury, like on Purcell Drive or something, like no big deal. And I couldn't get the value to work. And I was like, I know this should be the value. Like, it's totally good. And then I called one of I would have called you and said, what about this sale? It's sitting kind of low. And as soon as you call the realtor, they're like, oh, this happened, that happened. And then I have a reason. If I haven't made that extra investigation, I don't know the situation behind that. All of a sudden it's like, oh, there was this extenuating circumstance. That's not a good comp anymore. As soon as I throw that out, or there's an adjustment I did. The other one was a waterfront house, and all my sales are clustering together except this one, but I need this one for whatever reason to put in the report. Call the agent, and she's like, Jennifer, the pictures look great. They slapped granite on these counters. Nothing is straight. Nothing is good. All of a sudden, I have a quality or condition adjustment when I'm just looking at pictures. And don't get me wrong, because back in the day when because I'm so old, like I can remember like copying MLS pages out of the book and carrying them with me to inspections so that maybe I could figure out my comps ahead of time. Oh my God. And now we have all these pictures to look at. So I really do have like a greater strength in making those quality and condition adjustments. But if I hadn't called her, I wouldn't have known that. And the report didn't fall together. And that one phone call and like that. I mean, I do like, nobody's perfect. There's always going to be errors in appraisals and this and that, like little errors, like not like whatever. But it's like, I treat every appraisal like I can testify in court on this. And not all appraisers testify in court. Like when people call me for like divorce, first of all, they don't want to tell you why they're calling because it's embarrassing or whatever. So I have to like work that a little. And then I have to say, listen, like when you're calling other appraisers, some of them don't do court work. So you need to let them know. And usually that opens them up to talk a little bit more about it. But it's like for appraisers who haven't testified in court before, I think it's such an important thing. And you don't have to as an appraiser. It's not mandatory. If that's not the kind of work you like to do, that's fine. But it puts such a different level when you've been in court and you had to raise your hand in court and say, I swear this is the value of this. Right, I stand behind this work. It's a whole different level of quality. And like, so even my bank jobs, everything I do is going to be at that same level, hopefully, ideally.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today. We really appreciate your company and your insight. We get to talk to our clients all the time. So the real estate part of the real estate agent's job in a transaction gets advertised a lot. Everybody knows what we do. The mortgage agent's job, everybody knows what they do. But the appraiser, not a lot of people get to see that because most of your work is actually behind the scenes. And you end up, in a way, the bank ends up being a bearer of bad news because we only hear about the appraiser when things go south.
That's true.
But, in maybe 1 or 2% of the situations, the other 98%, nobody even hears about you, which you work in the shadows, and we like to bring you to light and expose a little bit of who it's a person, right? It's a family. Yeah. I mean, besides we play volleyball in the same league together, your husband and your kids. It's a real person behind that.
Yeah. No, it's nice.
Yeah, thank you for giving us a little bit of your most valuable asset, which is the time. You took the time to come here today to add value to our community. And a few people were going to be watching this, and this might be something that's going to help somebody out tremendously. And for that, we appreciate. We don't take that lightly. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I was worried I wouldn't have enough to say, but I didn't shut up the whole time.
This is good. We'll probably have you here for a part 2.
Yeah, part 2 is definitely coming out because that was just 10%.
Good. Well, that's it, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in with us. And again, if you have an opportunity, like this video and then share this with somebody. Click that subscribe button as well. And then we'll see you here next week for another episode of the Lighthouse Podcast.